Hey there, YouTube. Kyle back at you again with Kyle's Creations. Well, what we've got here is a 1984 Yamaha, what was it, VTX 750. It's the Virago, the 750 Virago. And apparently these bikes have a real problem with the starter mechanism that's inside of them. So there's a bunch of different videos and stuff out there on it. Somebody had already been in here and had already shimmed out from the backside. What I mean by that is where is it here? You've got your gear set. Come on. It sits in there like so. Okay? It sets in the engine like this. And there's two mods out there that people talk about quite a bit. One is to actually take a couple of shims and on this outside, this part that goes, towards the inside of the engine. And the reason for that is to hopefully push this whole assembly out just a little bit, because the problem is this particular gear right here contacts the starter gear, and as it spins up, this second gear, oops, of course it's hard to hold the dang thing together all at the same time. It actually physically spins like this. It engages, and it's going to engage the flywheel. And what ends up happening is it's not fully engaging, so it actually wears off this one particular edge right here, and just causes all kinds of problems and mess and stuff. So bad so that Yamaha has actually stuck a magnet right underneath it because they know that it's going to happen. So the other mod is, like you can see here, is actually putting a little metal. All right, where were we? Sorry about that. A customer of mine stopped by. But I think we're at to the other fix for this thing, other than shimming the backside of it. So basically, this gear here contacts the flywheel a little bit more fully. Because what ends up happening most of these things, this is a new gear. Shoot. This is the old gear. And you can kind of see, how chewed up it is, off of this edge right here. Especially compared to this side. And so the next fix that they say that is beneficial is to, let me get this out, I gotta take this apart here. This guy here, it's a little clip that sits, you'll see it sits in a groove. This clip sits in a groove in the engine like so. And the next thing that they're talking about doing is to physically pinch this, because this actually spins on the gear. And what they're saying, I guess what's ended up happening is that after this contacts the flywheel, that this pin here doesn't have enough compression on this outside to take the force of the engine, and it ends up slipping out. So by pinching this and putting a little bit more pressure on this clip, it allows it to stay engaged a little bit longer. Now, what I did is I used a piece of 3/8 copper and smushed it down and hammered it over the outside like that. And then of course you have to kind of use a vise to kind of press this thing back on here, because now this clip is way too tight to do by hand to get back on here. But however you do it, got to get this clip back on there, and just make sure that you make this thin enough that it's not going to engage the flywheel, and that the groove that this thing sits in, that this piece of metal that you put on there doesn't engage. Plus I did copper, because copper is a soft metal. If it does grind and it gets in the system, any of these metal gears and different things in there are just going to chew up that piece of copper, those little slivers of copper, if there is a little bit of rubbing somewhere. But that we'll see. And the other thing I did too is I did put a new starter on it, because my theory is, and what I've noticed is that, and I think the real I'm doing this to try to see, I'm kind of going through each one of the fixes to try to see what I think is going to be the actual fix to it. I put a new starter on, and this is what they call a 4-pole starter, so it's got a little bit more oomph than the original 2-pole starter. And I thought that was going to fix it. There's a brand new battery in it, but what I noticed is if I put a jump pack on the battery, not a jump pack, but I put a full-size deep cycle car battery on it, that's got a bunch, it's got 1,000 cold cranking amps. This thing spins up fast and it doesn't have any problems. As soon as I try to use just the battery from the bike, we start getting it where that gear doesn't want to stay engaged, because it's centrifugal force. As that gear rides on these splines, it's centrifugal force that's holding it. How fast can that start, the starter spin up? And so I think what the real cure for this thing is just to go out and get a high cranking battery that'll fit in the original battery box, which is a company called Odyssey that makes these really good batteries that are meant for like sandrails and stuff like that. They're really high powered, they're small. I mean, you can get big ones, but you can get ones that will fit in this battery box that are small, that have 1,000 cold cranking amps, So I think really, truly, that's going to be the real fix for this bike. So, but other than that, once I get this all installed, get this all sealed up, the customer's going to be here tomorrow to pick it up, so I got to do it this afternoon. We'll bring it back so you can kind of see how it acts on the stock battery, and I'm just going to tell them, hey man, you got to go spend, $250, $300 on a battery to get this guy to spin up the way it should. But other than that, we did just about everything we could. We replaced the gear, we put a better starter on, we're going to do a couple of the modifications that everybody says, help out, and we'll go from there. But again, like I said, a manufacturer does not put a magnet right underneath where that gear is if they don't think that it's going to grind. I don't think they thought maybe it was going to grind this bad, but it's definitely grinding. So other than that, guys, we'll see you in just a little bit.